7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Coming soon. Snake River Manufacturing is developing a revolutionary new way to design and build a custom kayak trailer. This modular design lets you customize your trailer one piece at a time, allowing you to grow as you go.
Looking for unbeatable customer service and a kayak shop that truly cares? At No Bad Days Kayak, Forrest and his team treat every customer like family. With unmatched attention to detail, they'll even ship your dream kayak anywhere in the U.S. No stress, no hassle, no bad days. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 20. We have a great guest for you today. Just as you know, just so you know, this episode is also brought to you by Vibe Kayaks. Whether you're chasing the perfect catch or just craving some peace on the water, Vibe Kayaks is your ride to freedom. Built for all skill levels in any water, fresh, salty, or somewhere in between. Vibe delivers premium kayak performance without the drama or cost. From the ultra versatile Shearwater 125 to the throw and go agility of the Makana 100. To ultra-portable inflatables, every Vibe kayak is crafted to elevate your experience on the water. So gear up, get out there, and do what you do. Awesome. All right, everyone. Tonight we have a guest who, if you have done any fishing in the competitive world of kayak fishing, you have used this gentleman's product. He is a great engineer turned entrepreneur, and it is Mr. Duke Weskamp. I'm going to bring him in right now. Hello, Duke.
What's happening?
Thank you for taking some time and coming in and chatting about the wonderful products that you make.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So just for those that don't know, you can give a brief rundown of who you are and what you do.
So my name's Duke Weskamp, and I run Ketch Products, which is a company that you probably mostly recognize for our bump boards, which are used in kayak CPR tournaments. But we're also a kayak accessories manufacturer, and we do a lot of other OEM stuff. We're also a machine shop.
Great. So I was looking, did a lot of research up to this because I know the bump boards, I know those things, and I see the rigging videos you do. What were your engineering background? What did you do before? What?
Wow, it was a long, slippery road here, but I was an applications engineer for an automation company. So I've been kind of building it cheaper, better, stronger, faster for vendors for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bumpy road there. I was a golf pro for a little while in between, but
Really?
that's my background. Yeah, that's my background as it's relative to engineering. I was a machinist first, and then an applications engineer and machine builder. And then I did that briefly here because when you start a small business, you do everything, at one point or another. So, I still held those roles, but on a day-to-day, I don't do much of the engineering anymore at all.
So you've transitioned pretty much full to the Ketch productions and the rigging and stuff like that.
I'm mostly, serving a sales mechanism and unfortunately administrative, but yeah, that's kind of
the hatchet man.
Yeah. Yep.
So, what drew you to kayak fishing? I mean, have you always done the fishing thing? And
yeah, I've always fished, and I kayak fished a long time before Ketch. I just was never aware of I was never really aware of Well, I was aware of CPR because I used to do CPR muskie tournaments, but I wasn't really aware that there was like this kayak scene that was doing CPR tournaments. And we, like we kind of came upon starting this product by happenstance, really.
Mm-hmm. So the moment you realized there was a problem, were there other boards in existence when you came up with yours, or?
Yeah, the old standby, which was the Hagen's Hog Trough, was the board that was available. And for those of you who haven't been around long enough to remember those, it's like a plastic board. It's less expensive. I think they were around $20 retail price. But they didn't have marked lines on them. So you actually had to get like a razor blade and a Sharpie marker out and really get in there and draw the lines on your board. And that was something that was like really the only competitive thing that was on our radar. There was another company called the Judge. Yeah, there you go. There's a hog trough. There was another competitive walleye board on our radar called the Judge. And that's something that no one in the kayak world has ever heard of. And it's a walleye board, but it's the only other product I ever thought like in our space that is really superbly accurate and really well built.
Yeah, I like how the hog trough, when you put a nice large fish on it, if it's not flat, it bends and gives you a little extra.
Yeah, that's a magic trick that sold a whole bunch of bump boards one day.
So what was the first prototype like? I mean, what did you use to make the first one out of?
We just used 1/4-inch bar stock, 3-inch by 1/4-inch aluminum bar stock back in the shop. And truthfully, the business was, me and my business partner were avid fishermen, and we just needed some reason to keep fishing. He had 3 kids. I had a wife and a kid on the way. I have 2 now. And so we needed something to keep us like in touch with fishing, a reason to stay in touch with it. And we were like, all right, well, let's start a products business. What's the easiest product we could design? And he says, a bump board. And I said, what the hell's a bump board? And he said, the thing we're using in the muskie tournaments, that big bump board you measure the fish on. I'm like, there's a market for that. And he's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, we could go to the tournaments. We get to like kick around and do what we want to do. It's a good, alibi, so to speak. So
right.
We kind of got into it without the bigger picture. It was like really, it was just an accident. And then, we started looking at it, like we started getting some local sales and we looked at it. And then I came across CPR and kayaks, which I kind of felt dumb about because this was maybe 2017. And I had been fishing out of a kayak since like 2007 or 2008. So it was just like, it was like a decade. I was just totally oblivious to this kind of little subsection of fishing that was going on that I was, could have been involved with, but just for one reason or another, like just didn't cross across my eyeballs.
So was there like a moment where, because I know you said you're taking them and going to the to the tournaments. Was there a moment when you just like had that like light bulb moment of like, oh my goodness, this is legit. This is something we can, when we say we're going to go make money, we're really going to go make money.
For sure. Like it was, we were running, we do engineering consulting and we're a machine shop too. Right. So the products business was not necessarily, well, like in the beginning, it wasn't even a priority. It was a facade, so to speak. Right. And then, I kind of started actively selling it to the kayak market, or trying to. And that led me to Chad Hoover, which was, hey, you got to get a hold of this guy. If you want this to be legal for kayak tournaments, this is the guy that's going to make it legal. And, pretty much when I talked to him, that was when I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to dedicate a lot more time to this. He's like, pack your truck up. We got the national championship coming in, 4 months, yada, yada. He's like, you're going to sell, 600-800 boards here just at the national championship. And, I'm like, there's only going to be 600 or 800 competitors. I'm going to sell one to everybody there. Like, come on. And like, that was, we went to that event and we sold well over 700 boards. just down at that event, and I was like, that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is kind of a full-time thing right now. The machine shop is gonna grow and do its thing. It's in good hands. It's like, let's kind of explore this, because it's definitely more than a hobby business at this point.
Yeah. I imagine the meeting with Chad was something like a Godfather moment. He's like, "Come here, let me speak to you."
I didn't know who he was, to be honest with you. Like, I love Chad. Like, he's a good friend of mine. Like, probably like my closest sounding board in the industry. Like, when I'm trying to work things out, like I help him. He's the guy that helps me get my head around things a lot. So I love him, man. He's like almost like a brother to me. But the truth is, at this point I had no idea. I had no idea who he was. I knew KBF was something that was like, oh, okay, well, I see these tournaments, and I had no idea how many people were participating, or, I didn't know how it worked. There's like local clubs, and then there's their regionals, and then there's, a national championship. Like, I didn't know much about it when it was just kind of like, he was like another guy. And then I Googled him afterwards, and I was like, oh, this guy like wrote the book on kayak fishing. That's pretty cool.
Right. And for those that don't know, because my brother just texted me, CPR is catch, photo, release. He doesn't fish kayak fish, so he's like, "What is CPR?" Oh, now you know. So when you sold your first version at the KBF events, was that like a production model that was in for a while, or did you get feedback and do some changes to it? Or
it kind of perpetually changed. The first board didn't have a cradle. Obviously, that was when we started getting interested in kayaks, or we became aware rather of the kayak segment, because I was already interested. That was the thing. That's why I felt so dumb about it. I was already fishing out of a kayak, and I never put two and two together. We were making a 60-inch musky board at the time. That was the big product that we were making. You can imagine how heavy that is. Like, it's a ridiculous product. We don't make it anymore. Or, well, we make one actually that's equally ridiculous out of an extrusion, but it's, they're super heavy. It's just not a great medium for a big product like that. And
Right.
When we found kayak, it was just, oh, okay, this is like the perfect fit. So I love the community and the space. It's really unique in the fishing world, and I think it's had some hard times in the last couple of years, but I think that we're kind of on the backside of that, and now we're going to kind of see another push of growth in this sport.
Yeah, I've noticed that, like you, Chad, and some of the other people that are really, really rooted big companies, you guys came in at a perfect time where everyone was like really friendly, and they, it was a buddy situation. And I saw that wave of like the venture capitalists trying to buy everything, let's say.
Yeah.
And now we're coming back to we're weeding our way back to being the family group. I feel that. Do you feel that on your end?
I hope that. I don't know that I think that there's just, if you go down the aisles of Cabela's, there's just aisles of broken dreams right there that are, brands that were either gobbled up by venture capital, gobbled up by Johnny Morris, gobbled up by Pure Fishing, gobbled up by, insert in your preferred name here. And so, like, I don't know that changes, but I think the one thing that's unique about the kayak sport is I don't think you can pretend it. And so I think, to a certain extent, the smaller businesses that have their fingers on the pulse, they're always going to be relevant. Like, we didn't really see a downturn, 2 years ago when, all the issues, quite frankly, hit the kayak segment. We didn't see that downturn. We still haven't seen a loss, ever since we've been in business. So it was, I think it's inherently one of those sports that, like, if there's holdouts, like small business holdouts, it'll be in segments like this, or sub segments of the fishing business that aren't, necessarily, like, let's call it pro bass fishing out of a boat, right? Which is kind of
Right.
the common equation, or what people kind of think of in their head.
So what were the challenges? Because you're 100% U.S. made,
Yep.
right?
Yes,
What were
sir.
the challenges of setting up a premium product as a U.S. Manufacturer?
It wasn't really hard or super hard with the bump board product. It got more difficult as we went along. Like, so as we started to do different things, like it limits our product line and the places we can move. And we're actually working on another brand called OPS, which is a retail brand, which again, we'll be able to do kind of some of the same solutions, not the same solutions, but some different solutions maybe that we had to shelve because we couldn't source it American made. We have, I mean, we're 99.9%. I think I looked at it the other day. There's like 4 foreign components of like 2,800 total components used in production right now. And they're actually small. They're like kind of the smaller volume stuff. So, that it wasn't that hard, but it's become more difficult as time's gone on.
How did you come up with the name Ketch?
My dad's a sailor, and a ketch is a type of boat, and then I just like the way, like the phonetics of the way, like it's catch, but it's not spelled the same way. And my wife had a good friend who was a typesetter, and I was like, hey, well, can you draw me up a logo with this name? We didn't even know what business we were going to use it for, because my business partner was thinking about painting baits, and I was like, oh yeah, hey, make me a logo Ketch. I want it to look kind of like, Ford Peterbilt, like oval, do that thing. And it just turned out real nice. So that was kind of how we got the name. There's no real significant meaning behind it.
So so I'll say, like with my magazine, it's like when I called someone and they're like, oh yeah, I know who you are. And you're like, whoa, how the heck do you know who I am? Was there a moment when you were watching something or went somewhere and you saw a particular angler using your board that it was like a wow moment? Like, okay,
I don't know. Again, it wasn't really, because I kind of grew up with the guys that were, I immersed myself in it. I'm not a bass fisherman, but as soon as we kind of, as soon as I realized there was CPR in kayaks, I kind of immersed myself in it and acquainted myself with a lot of these people, to where I wasn't, they weren't like like, I don't know, they were like buddies or peers at some, instead of like that, wow, like, kind of thing. I guess, like, I mean, like, well, then even like Gene Jensen's a guy that I've met and a guy that I know. And like, someone had to tell me that, they're like, dude, he's got like 600,000, YouTube subscribers or whatever. Cause I don't really consume media that way, So like, I was oblivious to a lot of it until I was very involved. And then when I was very involved, I kind of, met those people organically without being like, oh, that guy's the legendary, or Drew Gregory or Russ Snyder's or Jamie Dennison. That's a name people have forgotten. That was a hammer from back in the day, from years bygone. So
yeah, I guess being around them as friends, more so than the starstruck. That's a unique experience. So, how has kayak fishing changed since Ketch started? Like, have you seen a change that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally a different place. People were just flirting with motors, and they had one modest small graph, like 5 or 7 inches. Some people were even opposed to pedal drives at that point. That wasn't purist enough. And now we see a totally different sport where it's, almost a small John boat, is more a more apt description for most of what we're selling as kayaks to the marketplace right now. So I think it's changed a lot, and I think it's going to continue to change. I think we're right we're right at a really accelerated point of change, because I think gas motors are something that's going to become very prevalent in the next year or two and change the whole landscape again over. And we're just going to keep getting to look more and more like John boats. But That's what we wanted, right? We wanted affordable, personal fishing craft. We're not kayakers. It's important to remember that. None of us are going out being like, oh, dude, I'm going to go run some number 5s this weekend in my whitewater rig. Like, no, we're fishermen. No. We just happen to use a kayak to do our activity.
Yeah, I see the gas motor as being a slippery slope, even though some of the electric ones are knocking on the door of a good gas motor. So as far as their the ability of the angler to control the boat with a gas motor.
Yeah, I think it's all, you'll see the aftermarket, and you'll see the do-it-yourself angler push the market in a certain direction. They're XTR 130 from Bonafide. I don't believe that's gas motor rated. I've seen more than a few of them with gas motors on the forums, people plugging around, and they're going to break them. But ultimately, if there's enough people doing it, there'll be another boat that's bigger, that's, rated for a heavier motor, rated for a gas motor, stuff like that.
Well, I have a New Canoe Unlimited, and they sell it with a motor in some cases, so a gas motor. So
yeah, it's New Canoe's like one of the people that's like been leaning into that whole thing for
a while.
From the jump. Yeah, they've really leaned into it, like at least since 2018 or 2019, and I think they've been 3 horsepower gas rated since then. And they actually sell a transom mount. They're one of the few, in the beginning, they were one of the few companies that had enough balls to sell their own mount and take the liability for the motor and telling you to put the motor on it. So I commend New Canoe on that.
Yeah, they're like, oh, look at this big boat. New Canoe's like, been there. It'll hold a motor. I've been on this block forever,
They've got a really neat steering system too. That one pedal steering system is super neat, man. That's probably right now one of the best designed steering systems out there. It costs an arm and a leg, but that's buttery. Yeah, that's a nice setup.
So I've got a Bixby motor that I mount on, and then I've got a NK 180 right here, brand new in the box, and they both use the same mount, so I could just swap them in and out, depending on where I want to go. Super easy. Right. So we talked about the Ketch Board. What are some other products that you make that are notably under the radar but should be above the radar?
Well, I mean, we have a whole line of T-Track products that, depending on who you are and what platform you're on, you may or may not be aware of. We do a ton of motor mounts, both bow and stern motor mounts for Bonafide, Hobie, and New Canoe right now, adding native, slowly adding everybody, but we take the time to kind of engineer the mount the right way, as opposed to just, it's not a game of just being the first to market. Like, we've had an XTR since, for almost 7 months now. So, and I'm still, I was still farting around with the bow mount today. So, the bow mount systems, especially, that's where we're strong. I'm starting to learn more and more about stern, but like predominantly up here, deep big water, like most of the anglers are opting for the bow mount to hold them on offshore structure
for the spot lock.
Yeah.
So I saw engineer, and most of the time when I speak to engineers, does your brain ever stop? Because I've seen like the mindset of most of the engineer people I know. They're always like, 50 things they're working on, but there's 400 things that are just over here waiting to be pulled down. Are you like constantly innovating and always on the go?
Well, I'm a workaholic insomniac, if that answers your question.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know that I'm always innovating, but just the same curiosities that lead you to answer engineering questions lead you to like read a news article and want to dive into that or whatever. That same curiosity kind of folds over into everything. So I'm prone to being curious. I'm always moving. I don't sleep, and that's kind of my lifestyle. So yeah, I would agree with that to a certain extent.
And if someone out there had an idea for a product or something, maybe an enhancement to one of your products, do you accept feedback and recommendations or custom orders?
Well, those are complicated. Those are complicated questions. The I generally I generally try not to engage on new product ideas, because at this point we probably have 65 products that are not like being sold, or the public's not aware of them, but they're finished in the can.
Hmm.
And so it's a liability to me to start asking someone, because it could just, we could get off there and you could be like, hey, Duke, I got this great idea. Like, I want to do this like bearingless foot steering system. And we happen to be working on a bearingless foot steering system right now. And so if I'm like, oh, Roy, I'm not interested. And then 8 months later, I release a bearing, you're like, yeah. So it's like trying to avoid that kind of situation. It's not really that I don't like to crowdsource ideas. I
Yeah.
do kind of like to tease new products before we sell them on like Facebook, because you'll get a lot of crowdsourced opinions. You get a lot of a lot of BS opinions, but you'll get opinions, because that's what the internet's good for. And so, use it for what it's good for. And, but I try to discourage, like, don't send me your next $1 million idea. Just build it, sell it, like that's the path forward. I have licensed products from people. Jim Strunk designed the Ketch ID. And then a former business associate of mine, who I will not name, designed the Ketch ID product, or the original version of it. So we have worked with designers and other entrepreneurs in the past, but generally, like, now I'm more like, I want you to be motivated to kind of do your thing, and that's a better place for me to be putting my efforts, and that's a better place for like someone who wants to like cross over into this world. That's where they should be putting their efforts.
Great answer. So, if someone were to want to start, so let's say I had an idea for something to enhance a product, or um, to make the Ketch board better.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for someone who's going to try and make it better, that won't step on your toes?
I mean, there's a lot of things it's a unique product. Like, I'm much more likely to take some input on a different product line other than the measuring boards, right? Because like the measuring boards are a whole thing. If I change a design element, I've got all these different sanctioning bodies that rely on our product, right? So I have to make sure that this maintains enough consistency that they're happy with it. And so it's not like that's a really, really tough product to change, because we've thought about that longer than any man should think about designing something that amounts to a fish ruler. So it's really hard to I guess to play within our set of rules in order to make it a successful product. It's hard to do that from an outsider's perspective without me kind of taking you through the whole rigmarole.
Awesome. All right, so we're the halfway point pretty much, and for those that don't know, people have submitted questions, and sponsored by Kayak Coffee. The individuals that ask questions are entered in a drawing for a Kayak Coffee giveaway. Man, this stuff smells amazing. I don't know if you're a coffee drinker or not, but this is good stuff. So, all right.
I take my forced caffeine through coffee, but I'm not a sophisticate. Like, I'll take a Keurig cup or whatever. I'm not. A good coffee's wasted on me.
I like my cream and sugar with coffee kind of guy, or
no, I'll drink it black, but I just don't care. It's like just a vessel for caffeine delivery system.
All right. So the first question is from Steve Burge. He's a Heroes on the Water guy from Tidewater. As a fabricator, what was the hardest challenge to overcome when designing the board?
At first it was work holding. It was hardest to figure out how to hold the board and then engrave as big of the surface, or as much of the surface as we wanted to, and then hold the board flat. And then down the road the original design that we facilitated when we were just using the CNC machines. As we changed over to laser, there was a whole new learning process. Like, it was easy because we understood CNC machinery and the Cartesian plane, the 2-3 axis machines kind of all work the same, but there was a big learning curve in the process and the optimization of that. That was like probably the hardest thing that we've had to do.
Mm. What drove you to change from the old style Ketch board to the new style?
Increased saltwater usage, which was leading to some failures of the powder coat, was one of the reasons. And then the other reason was we never had the margins in the old product to sell to dealers. And that was, one of the big things that I got slammed a little bit about early in the kayak community, like around 2018, 2019, was I was farming everything was going direct to me, right? I didn't have a product that was dealer ready. And so when we examined using an extrusion and changing the design, we had enough margin dollars where we could now be able to work with all the paddle sports specialty stores. And that was really the big driving factor. The margins are one thing, but like mostly we give them back to our dealer base. It was mostly about making the product accessible, because I think people had a lot of worries early. When the product hit the market, there was a lot of instances where we were sold out, or we were sold out of a certain color, or we were sold out of this or that. And I just don't think tournament directors like the idea of like, oh, this little company in East Dundee, Illinois could be sold out of the bump boards that we need to run our tournament. And so I always felt like that was it was important to develop those relationships. And then, it's borne fruit, as we've gotten into, more product lines. It's obviously we have more and more applicability to all of our dealers, better product lines for all of them.
Great answer. All right. Ketch has gone from a small fabrication company to a comprehensive kayak rigging supplier. If you had the choice, would you do it all over again?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably. I'm simple. Like I wouldn't do it because I make a lot of money. So let's be clear. I'm not rich. I don't live like a rich lifestyle. I work my ass off to run a fishing business, and a machine shop, and they're growing, and it's nice. It's nice to have the successes, and it's nice to grow the businesses. But, man, I would be hard pressed to suggest to someone to get into this business if it's for anything other than you're just passionate about it. You really need to love it, because you're like, if you can sell really well in this game, you can sell really well something that'll make you 2, 3, 4 times more a year.
Yeah, I could speak from experience on the magazine side that it does take a lot to get through the channels to people and get the commitments. So, yeah, you're right. If you could do it in this industry, you can do it almost in any. So
yeah, but that's also the things that protects us. It's not so easy to become the next kayak magazine, right? Because like you have to be committed as you are to go forward and do it, right? There's a barrier to entry there. You can't AI fake that.
Yes, that's true.
It
took a while for people to realize I was a real person, because there's a local gentleman, and I was taking photos because I own a photo studio as well. Taking pictures of him for the magazine. And he's like, you know how many people call me and say, do you know this guy? Is he real? Is he legit? I was like, well, what do you tell him? Hopefully you tell him I am. He's like, yeah, I back you up. So, but Steven, with Country Kid Outdoors, do you use Gar tool in the machine shop?
Gar tool? I'm not familiar with that one, Steven. You're going to need to send me a link.
He may or may not be a salesperson for them.
Yeah.
And this is from Steven. His question is, how big is Ketch now as a company?
I'll answer that on a square footage basis. We're in 15,000 square feet and we're bursting at the seams. So we're currently in East Dundee, Illinois, and we're looking to move to southern Wisconsin as quickly as we can. We're just trying to find a property right now.
Heck yeah. What is the future goal for the company looking ahead?
Well, I really want to change the perception that we're a bump board company, and I want people to be first familiar with our aftermarket and accessory products, and then they happen to make the bump boards too. That's been a kind of a battle that we've been trying to overcome for a little while now, and it's that's my goal. I feel like we've got the business organized to a point right now where like we can sustain doing very niche business, so we can kind of grind this whole niche out and do really well. So it's really just about kind of just doing it a little bit better and kind of making people aware that we're not just a bump board company, like, which is a hard perception to shake. It entering the sport, I guess I would have picked any other product to try to come in and be a mover and a shaker and someone who is designing innovative products. Like it was a ruler. The first thing was a ruler. So yes. I guess that we have to prove the engineering end, we have to prove the innovation end still, because to a lot of people it's just a stick with a ruler on it, and honestly it's more complicated. A bump board's a little more complicated than most people would imagine. There's a little more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah, I can imagine it's sort of like the method actors. You've played this role for a long time. Now you want to go out and do comedy. It's like you're not the comedy guy, but you are. I mean, if you look at your background with engineering, you probably have so many things that are in the pipeline that will blow people away. So, and Steven says he's a regional sales manager for the Southeast. I thought so. I thought so. What's it that you miss all the shots you don't take?
Yeah, no, go for it, man. I won't blame a guy for that. We're using just for Steven, we're using Zenit tool right now because I contact the salesman. I could call him right now at 7:30 my local time, and I need a special tool and I need it by tomorrow morning, and he's going to hand deliver it himself. And then he's also bringing by samples and like, hey, what's going on? Like, that's the business I love. Like the guy that's prompt and delivery for us. We're trying to speed things up.
All right, here's a question. How has the Yak Attack new leaderboard product affected Ketch sales?
Not much. Actually, I would say that it's probably benefited our sales in a certain degree. They build a plastic product, and that actually came in more expensive than our standard plastic product. And I realized there's like some extra kind of features. There's the call tags, and there's a lot of extra stuff that other features that kind of Yak Attack is built into the product. But if anything, I'm happy that they're there, because it's I caught a lot of flack as like, oh, you're some sort of monopoly in bump boards. Like being a monopoly in bump boards is worth enough money to be a monopoly in, so like having another competitor in the space, I have confidence in Yak Attack to build a good product that stands up. I'm glad it's not another small business. I'm glad it's someone who's established and can take the product seriously, because I think the only reason I got into this sport was because the original product, the hog trough, just didn't really take it seriously. It was kind of a good suggestion of how long the fish was. It definitely wasn't a tool usable unless it was modified for CPR. So it's good to have another option, so I just don't take this like, oh, you're a monopoly heat, so God bless Yak Attack.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of competitive spirit to shine light in both directions. So
Yeah, absolutely.
this is from Philip Huddock. He says, "What future innovations with Ketch? What future innovations with Ketch inspire you to keep moving forward?"
I don't know. I guess as we do more and more pieces, my hope is like someday we can design a whole boat, and eventually like kind of have our own kayak. Very specialized, kind of fishing kayak. But I guess that's what drives it. That and bills,
Yeah.
bills to get paid. So, but yeah, I mean, we want to. I want to do. I'd eventually like to design either a small boat, like a small personal boat, or a fishing kayak of some sort.
Wow. Would it be aluminum?
It might. That wouldn't be out of the question. I just I have a hard time getting around how useful and easy HDPE is. It doesn't stay nice and flat, but it's easy to patch and it's more accessible to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem patching an aluminum hull here, but the average person, it's that's why John boats sit on cinder blocks in front yards.
You mean everybody doesn't have a TIG welder and
a TIG welder, or like something to do some pop rivets, a pop rivet gun or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then all the sheet metal cutting and all that stuff. Yeah, everyone doesn't have that. And like down south, I think skews more towards that. Down south you have like that like kind of redneckery, right? Like where it's like everyone's just kind of like good at everything. I know a little bit of welding. I can do pop rivets. I can feel it. Like, up north, I think it's harder to find. And I think the HDPE hull there's a lot of advantages. They just need to design them a little bit different. And there's a lot of advantages. It's more easily mendable. It's more easily modifiable by the consumer. There's a lot of things to like about it. You just gotta build it thinking about all the stuff they're gonna put on it eventually, which I think is the point where we're at right now, which is the manufacturers are playing catch up, right? Mm-hmm. You want 2 graphs, you want forward-facing sonar. Oh wait, you want a bow mount and a stern mount. You want this like side stage. You want 4 batteries. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's gotten the sport has kind of accelerated, and like we went from like 1 battery to run your 5-inch fish finder, 7 years ago when I kind of entered the space. That was the normal setup. Like, only the rich guys had the motors, and now it's like, man, there's motors just about everywhere, and there's 1 graph, and it's like there's a lot of guys running 2 graphs now, and they're not 7-inch, they're 10-inch. It's gotten crazy.
That's true. Yeah, and the weight limits. I'm not a small guy, so in order for me to have the dual batteries, the dual monitors, the motor, the tackle box, whatever you put, the drink, it all adds up to like some crazy weight capacity that's needed. So,
well, but you are but you're more the norm than you think, because like, I mean, you've been on I'm new to kayak fishing pages, and they're like, hey man, I'm 280, I'm 315 pounds. Like, I'm trying, is this stable enough? Can I stand in it? Like, so it's not outside the norm. And so like, we got to stop acting like everyone that does this is Eric Jackson size.
Yeah.
If you're Eric Jackson size, you can put whatever you want on your kayak, go for it, but it's a different game for each and every angler, and they have different goals and all that.
Yeah, I've got 100,000 views on one of my fat guy getting in a kayak. And they were like, what? And everyone's like, what kayak is that? I'm like, oh, it's a new canoe. It's amazing. So I haven't been on the XTR or the Wilderness 128, but both of those look like they're going to be a great platform if I get away from new canoe. So they both look extremely stable, especially with the wide platforms. And
the new canoe is great. You don't need to get away from the new canoe unless you want to. It's the new canoe platform. You an unlimited?
Unlimited, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's the best. I've owned a lot of kayaks, and it's the best kayak I've ever been in my life. Love it. But I do like the wide cockpit and the way that what plenty of
I'll
extra
tell you,
space.
I think there's more space on the Unlimited than there is on the XTR. More usable space.
I would agree with that. But
You don't have the fancy stand up like
Yeah.
kind of set up in the front. If you're really using that, and let's face it, most of us, we've been fishing out of a kayak long enough. We've adapted our fishing game. We're mostly sitting down. We're not standing up unless we absolutely have to. Like it's like take a piss status. That's when we're standing up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will not. I mean, I'm a big dude. Even if they tell me I can walk on the bow, the casting deck, no, not me. No. If I get on it and the prop of the motor is out on the back, then I know it shouldn't be up there.
Well, no, I mean, and again, those are like cool features, and like all those features drive it forward. So I don't want to come across like I'm knocking that, because like I think the XTR is really cool, but like again, it's really cool for that 180-pound guy or less that decides that he wants to add 2 power poles and 2 motors and 2 graphs to it. But big guys, I'm 245 right now, so I would run an XTR with 1 graph and like 1 motor, and I'm not trying to be dangerous while I'm out there on the water, and I know that I'm a load that's top weight in that kayak. So but I think that the market the market eventually will come around to what we're doing, like the bigger guys and like just more equipment.
All right, so Philip has another question. If you had one lure to fish forever, what would it be?
Golly, it'd be a Salmo Hornet 4. I don't care. The guy who asked the question can pick the color.
Nice. So one of the questions alluded to about the rigging. So I've noticed that you guys do a lot of rigging. Is that something that you love as much as the manufacturing, or?
Yeah, I mean it's almost a necessity, right? It's we kind of like, and I don't. So we don't advertise our rigging, but we have a steady flow of business that's rigging that goes through the back of the shop. But it's more of like necessity based. Like, hey, we're trying to learn about this platform right now. So like I kind of put my feelers out locally or into the groups that I know. I'm like, hey, anybody building this? Like, hey, we need to develop a mount. So could we borrow the boat, or we can get you a free mount for borrowing the boat, kind of thing. And like a lot of it's bartering, because otherwise I got to own 60 boats here at all times to be able to kind of go back and forth between them. And but we're like I said, we're up against space in the space that we're in. But when we moved to Wisconsin, the whole idea is I'd like to have an additional 2,500 square feet to do nothing but rigging. So like that's come in, buy a boat, see all the products, kind of do the whole thing. But right now it's kind of one of those things that like we're doing it selectively, and it probably causes me more headaches than it should. But I do enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. But on that level, it is a necessary evil. Like we need to understand, I can't build a good part for people rigging their boats unless I'm actually out there rigging some boats, if that makes sense.
Now, do you see yourself in the new facility having a rigging shop for people that aren't in the R&D, let's say? Like if someone locally needs to have their stuff rigged
100%. And we're doing some of that now. I've got 2 boats in the back of the shop right now. One for a gentleman down in Texas, another for a local guy, that are both in the shop right now getting stuff done. And again, I don't try to advertise it or blow it up, because I get a lot of requests, and it's like a lot of times people are like, well, you keep putting me off, and I just don't have the time to do it. I'd rather put you off than tell you I can do it, and your kayak comes and sits here for freaking 4 months, while you're waiting for something to get done. So yeah,
that customer service.
I try. I like the building, and the guys at the shop like the building. It's easier than most of what they do on a day-to-day. So they like doing it. And, like after hours, putting the tunes on, like getting going and back. But it's like right now the space is so confining. I can only really have 2 or 3 customer jobs in the shop at once.
Mm-hmm.
And, it takes me like a week or 10 days to turn those 3 jobs over or so.
Awesome. Are there any new products that are coming out that you want to share with anyone, or that are anything that's going to be?
We're working on a bearingless foot steering system, and I think people should be very excited about that. It's going to be inexpensive for a change. So it's going to be a Ketch product that'll be cheaper than most of your Wizard steering systems out there.
Mm-hmm.
We also go with a bearingless design because all those Wizard systems are going to have their issues. Kind of those chickens will come home to roost eventually, especially in the saltwater.
Yes. Yeah. Saltwater has a way of finding all of your flaws.
Yep. Yeah. Especially it'll find everything that ain't stainless. That's 100% for sure. It'll even find some of the stuff that you say is stainless.
That's true. That is so true. Yeah. I live in Virginia Beach, and even some of the air mist will show you what's not stainless.
So do you do a mix of salt and fresh then?
So I mainly do freshwater. I've done some saltwater, but I was going to ask you this question, which I ask most business owners. I started this so I could go fishing as a job, but I never get to go fishing. The only time I go fishing is when I go with Heroes on the Water. I volunteer for them as often as I can. So on the way in tonight, I stopped by the local pond, caught a fish, felt proud of myself because it very rarely happens at that pond, and then came into work. So, but I do like to saltwater fish because we have it all right here. We have redfish, speckled trout, flounder. I can go across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge to where I grew up on the eastern shore of Virginia, and there's all types of, you name it, saltwater is pretty much there. So
that's awesome.
And I've got the larger motor now, so if I want to go out, I can go further. So, but
beautiful.
How about yourself? Now, do you get to fish a lot, or do you spend most of your
If I'm being honest, like I went from fishing an absurd amount, absurd. Like I was fishing 150 to 200 days a year. That was pre-marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me justify to the gentleman out there. It's like they're wondering, but that's BS right there. Those numbers. And then got married and we had kids, and then probably even when like the first 3 years we had the business, I was still out fishing 150, 200 days a year. And then now that the business has grown, there's like an administrative load and a sales load that I just can't seem to get away from. So if I'm 100% honest with you, I didn't do anything last year fishing wise, except for take my kids to my parents' pond that they have behind their house. So they fished in Grandma and Grandpa's pond. That was the limit of my fishing experience last year. I took boats out and tested them, but we also used the same pond, like to go out and just kind of run stuff around to make sure the motor mounts are good, test new products and such. So, I get to fish less and less every year. I just, I don't know if you know who Dustin Murguia is. I just hired him as a sales guy, and hopefully if he does his job right, maybe I'll have enough time to go fishing a little bit here.
Yeah, I went and volunteered for the Heroes on the Water this past weekend, and it's the first time I've been on my kayak in almost a year. And I felt it because I was like all noob out there. I got two graphs, power pole, looked like I'm rigged for any tournament you could ever think of. Didn't catch anything. Just out there, just putting around, running the motor, looking at the scenery. It was still beautiful. I enjoyed every moment of it. But yeah, I was like, I need to do this more often.
That's the big difference now than it was, 3-4 years ago. 3-4 years ago, a lot of the tournament anglers were using motors and graphs and starting to use multiple graphs. And now it's gotten to the point where it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's just, you could be a recreational angler and you're just trying to add these kind of, I think that's where I think the market is growing, but it's not necessarily showing. If that's, it's not showing in, Bassmaster entries or whatever, but it's like it shows, like, because I start paying more and more attention to the recreational guys, and you see more and more of them like, oh, I need a motor, I need like forward facing, I want to try
Yes.
this, I want to try that, and it doesn't, like, it's not driven by, I want to go on Saturday and catch 5 and cash a check, you know.
Right. I had forward-facing sonar, and I spent most of my first trip with it looking at the screen, trying to figure out what I was doing. I was like, you know what? I've just wasted my whole day trying to figure out how to use this piece of equipment as opposed to just casting and having fun. So I ended up letting it go because I was like, you know, I've got my side view. I'm good with that. I can see all I need to see. I can see everything I'm casting to and not catching from without having the forward-facing sonar.
You
So
don't need 3 dimensions of
No.
not catching.
I could actually see the fish laughing at me. Whew. Who knew fins could do that?
Yeah, if you
So,
get the resolution just right, you can see their little lips laughing.
yes, calling friends over. This guy resorting to the beetle spin. Awesome. Well, if there's anything else, we've come up to about the hour mark. Is there anything you want to share before we hop off? Or
No, I appreciate all the support that we've gotten from the community over the years. You know, kayak fishing is, you know, it was a hobby of mine that's become, well, it became a lifestyle and a career. So, you know, I would not be afforded this opportunity if there weren't enthusiasts out there fishing, man, and measuring fish and, you know, rigging up their kayaks. And so thank you to everyone out there that ever goes out and buys anything from Ketch. Like, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. We're a real deal, all American made business. And like, that's what you support. You support the 16 or so full-time employees and the 7 or 8 part-time employees that we have here. And that's real. You do that with your support, and so thank you to the community. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate everything that this community is offering.
awesome. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and put you in the back. I'm gonna say goodbye to everyone, then I'll bring you right back in.
All right, sounds good.
All right. All right, that was episode 20. I appreciate Duke coming on. If you don't have a catch board, you're probably not a tournament angler or don't care what size your fish are. But I would recommend you go check out one of his boards. Or if you have multiple kayaks, color match them and get them all. So if you haven't had a chance, go to snakerivermanufacturing.us and you can check out all the cool items that Steve has with the trailers he's building. It's some great innovation they're doing over there. So go to Snake River Manufacturing and check out their trailers. Also go check out No Bad Days Kayak with Forrest. Forrest is a great individual with a amazing business. They have shipping ability throughout the United States. The great customer service. So go to No Bad Days Kayak and give them a shout. Also, if you're looking for a good kayak, Vibe Kayaks is a sponsor, and they have some great kayaks. My first kayak was a Shearwater 125, and I loved it. So go check those guys out. Also, if you're in the market for some coffee, kayakcoffee.com has provided a code, CAFE20, for 20% off of the kayak that the coffee they offer. And if you would like to have one of the Kayak Coffee mugs, the cafe mugs, Nico's Art Therapy on Facebook is selling them, and all of the proceeds go directly to Nico's Therapy. So, all right. Thank you again. And you all have a good evening, and I'll see you in the next episode 21.